What's going on, Alabama fans? Chris Daughtry back again with you guys on the Alabama Football Report by Chat Sports. You know what we do every single Sunday. It is our overreaction video to Alabama's 29-22 win over South Carolina. This one always had those trap game type of vibes to it, but Alabama at the end of the day was able to come away with the victory. So if you are happy with the win versus South Carolina, make sure you get down there and like today's video. You don't necessarily have to be happy with how Alabama got the win. Just getting the win at the end of the day was the most important thing. So make sure you guys get down there and like today's video. All right, overreaction number one. It was a struggle win. That is totally fair to say, but at the end of the day, it just does not matter anymore in college football if it is a struggle win or not. You just got to go out there and win the game. You saw the committee, kind of how they valued wins and losses last year. It doesn't really matter how you end up winning the game as long as you end up winning the game, and Alabama did that. Thought they showed a lot of fight. They showed a lot of grit in that game yesterday. So yes, it was a struggle win, but at the end of the day, I think all of us just need to be happy that you come away with a win in that game versus South Carolina. All right, overreaction number two. The offensive line was garbage. They were awful yesterday. This is not an overreaction. South Carolina only did have 2 sacks in that game, but they did also have 6 tackles for loss. Credit to South Carolina's defensive line. Those guys are really, really good, and we knew that going into the game. Whether it was, Monquel Goodwine, or, Dylan Stewart or some of those other guys, Brian Thomas Jr. as well. We knew going into that game that those guys were going to get theirs, but, man, Alabama's offensive line just really, really struggled a lot, just being able to not allow pressure when they were only rushing 4. And we don't have a consistent run game at all right now. Whether it's Caden Proctor, Wilkin Formby, Michael Carroll, Cam Dewberry, Jaden Roberts, every single one of those guys had rough games yesterday. When they did that crispy package with Caden Proctor, you had Wilkin Formby getting beat. There was multiple times where Caden Proctor got beat on the other side. Cam Dewberry, I don't know what's going on with that guy. He was spun around multiple times in that game, just, looking backwards. It was just not a good performance at all by Alabama's offensive line. And I do want to say this as well. I think that not having Danny Lewis Jr. out there really does hurt you in terms of the run game, because when you have Danny Lewis Jr. out there with Josh Cuevas in a, kind of a 2 tight end set there, you never really know what that Alabama offense is going to do. Is it going to be a run? Is it going to be a pass? Really does keep the defense on their heels there. So, I do think Danny Lewis Jr. being out hurt the offensive line a little bit in that regard. But, overall, credit to the South Carolina defensive line. Those guys are really, really good. But, man, going forward, I don't know what's got to be shaken up here. Whether it's, Cam Dewberry maybe being swapped out there for William Sanders. I don't really know. But they definitely struggled in that game yesterday. So what is your confidence level in Alabama's offensive line? Let me know what you guys think down at the pinned comment of today's video. 1 on the low end, 10 on the high end. Let me know what you guys think down at the pinned comment of today's show. All right, overreaction number 3. This team is resilient. That is not an overreaction at all. The offense really couldn't get anything going at the beginning of the game, really at the end of the game either, but finally they were able to get some stuff going there. But they just kept fighting. The defense held South Carolina to 6 of 17 on third downs. Alabama had 14 points off turnovers. You held them to a missed field goal. You only gave them 6 points in the first half of the game. South Carolina had 10 points off turnovers. They got 3 points off that fumble recovery from Ty Simpson, and then that, muffed punt, whatever you want to call it, goes off Jalen Mbakwe's left. They got a touchdown off of that. But Alabama went down late in this game. They were down 14-15, and then after that, they went down 8. 14-22 after that muffed punt. And then 10 minutes left in the game. Alabama goes 14 plays, 79 yards, about 7.5 minutes or so on that drive to score a touchdown and get the 2-point conversion. Shout out Ryan Grubb. This dude is just absolutely in his bag in those critical moments. Alabama ends up tying the game after that 2-point conversion, and then Deontay Lawson goes and rips the ball out of LaNorris Sellers' hands with 1:30 left on the clock, and, you end up going down the field and scoring again with 34 seconds left in the game. It definitely was not pretty, but, they fought back against a roster who is very, very talented, and, some people are going to complain and yell and scream about his team being complacent and whatnot, but hey, that South Carolina roster is very, very talented, and they played their best game of the season yesterday, and you were able to get the win. So I think a lot of people need to be happy about that. All right, we'll continue with some more overreactions here in just a second. But first, want to give a shout out to the sponsor of today's show. It is Prize Picks. You and I make decisions every single day, but on Prize Picks, being right can get you paid. Don't miss any of the excitement this football season on Prize Picks, where it is good to be right. This is what we got cooked up here for the Bengals versus the Jets game later on today. Going with Breece Hall more than rushing yards. He's been kind of banged up this week, so I don't know how well I feel about that one actually happening there, but also going with Joe Flacco more than 1.5 passing touchdowns. And T. Higgins, we'll see if he can have another big game today with 52.5 receiving yards, going with a more than on all of those there. Prize Picks is the only app that offers stacks, meaning that you can pick the same player up to 3 times in the same lineup. You want more than on Josh Allen pass yards, rush yards, and touchdowns. Now you can pick all of them in the same lineup only on Prize Picks. Play Prize Picks to get action on football in more than 40 different states, including California, Texas, Georgia, and yes, Prize Picks is available in Alabama as well. So download the Prize Picks app today and use promo code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's promo code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That link's down in the description of today's show. It's also down at the pinned comment of today's show as well. Prize Picks. It's good to be right. All right, overreaction number 4 here. The defense actually played pretty well. I think in general, yeah, but they did have their ups and downs in this game. LaNorris Sellers, this was his 3rd game this year where he had at least 200 yards passing. He went 18 for 32 with 2 touchdowns, 1 through the air and 1 on the ground, and he did cook you on the ground as well. Overall, I think, though, Alabama only gave up 3 yards per carry. I would consider that a win. Nick Harbor did have the 54-yard touchdown after Ryan Williams dropped the ball on 4th down. It was the very, very next play there. I believe that was even Zabian Brown that got beat deep on that play. But, look, they held South Carolina to 6 for 17 on 3rd downs. That is really, really good, and that's all I think you could really ask for in terms of that 3rd down efficiency there. You had 2 massive turnovers that really helped you win the game. You had the pick 6 at the beginning of the game from Deshaun Jones, and then you had that forced fumble by Deontay Lawson that set Alabama up to go down the field and go ahead score that winning touchdown there at the end of the game. Alabama had 7 tackles for loss. They had 2 sacks, including the game winner by Keon Keeley. It seems like every single time Keon Keeley gets in the game, he has a game-winning sack or a game-icing sack. I absolutely love that kid, and I love that, he has shown that, putting his head down, going to work, not complaining about anything really does pay off there. I think Alabama probably should have had about 8 sacks in that game yesterday, but they just could not get LaNorris Sellers on the ground. There were plenty of times they had him wrapped up in the backfield and he was just able to get away. I know he's a really big dude, but you got to be able to finish some of those sacks there. But I think overall, Alabama gave up 6 points in the first half. It could have been more than that. They had kind of that bend, don't break type of mentality there in the first half, and you did get helped out a little bit with the missed field goal there. But overall, defense definitely had their ups and downs yesterday, but I thought they had a pretty decent game. So grade the defense versus South Carolina. A, B, C, D, or F. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments section of today's video. All right, overreaction number 5 here. Germie Bernard might be your offensive MVP. I don't think this is an overreaction. This kid is so versatile. You see him line up everywhere. Whether it's outside, in the slot, they put him in the backfield a lot as well. He just makes so many plays out of nothing as well. You remember back last week, he was dead to rights on just a little bubble screen out to the right side, and for a solid, it should have been a tackle for loss of about 7-8 yards. He ends up getting a first down on that. He scored 2 times there in critical moments yesterday for Alabama. He's your leading receiver. Yesterday, he was your, second leading rusher. He was your leading rusher last week. If Germie Bernard isn't your MVP, at least offensive MVP at this point in the season, if it's not Ty Simpson, I definitely do think it is Germie Bernard. We've got you guys covered on all things Crimson Tide news. We're live for every single Alabama game. We got videos for you guys all season, all off-season long as well. Whether it's recruiting, whether, the transfer portal time comes around, we have got you guys covered. So do not miss out. Join the community here at the Alabama Football Report and hit that sub button for me right now.